right, we are back in London, and on this day we went to the Tower of London, which is very exciting for me. As you heard in my last video, I am obsessed with Tudor history and just English monarchy in general, and this is the Traitors' Gate, where they would bring in traitors before they were going to be executed. Of course, I had to eat chips, which they call crisps, and this was inside one of the buildings. This was the chapel inside one of the buildings at the Tower of London. And it was really beautiful, and a king had died in here, and there were a lot of stairs. This is the Tower Green. This is where, right behind me, is where Anne Boleyn was executed, where they took her head off. This is one of the older parts of the building. I think it was from like the 1200s. And, oh, this is the chapel that the king died in. This is the center of the Tower of London and the view of Tower Bridge. A lot of people think this is the London Bridge. It is not. It's Tower Bridge. This was a teeny tiny little altarpiece for when they would travel, because of course you still need to pray when you travel. And this was the original jailhouse graffiti. These were carvings done in the walls of the tower by prisoners when they were awaiting their execution. These were the armor that was worn by Henry VIII, and excuse me, Henry, I think maybe a little braggalicious there. This is the tallest and smallest suit of armor, and this book, it was just a record of, like a ledger record, but it was huge, and I love books, so I loved it. This was the actual axe and block they used to chop people's heads off, and back to Tower Green for the end of our trip. This is the oldest church in London. It's right across the street from the tower. Of course, we had to do an afternoon tea because obviously we're in England, and it was absolutely delicious. It was at the Wellesley. Highly recommend. James also loved it, and I love that he loves to do these fancy things with me. They gave us a second serving of desserts, which I was super excited about, and their scones with clotted cream were incredible. So the next day, I took James to the Grand Lodge. He is a Freemason, and this is one of the oldest lodges. They actually had a full museum, and you could go into the actual part of the Grand Lodge where they hold meetings and gatherings, and there was not a single person here. It was incredible. We had the run of the joint, and it was absolutely beautiful. The architecture, the art, James was pretty besotted. And of course we had to do our little hand-holdy picture. This was a great place to take selfies because there was no one there. I had the Muffin Man song in my head all day after walking down Drury Lane. This was actually a Parliament building, but it just looked so beautiful. I thought it was a church, and so I had to take a video of it. I think it originally was a church, but now it's the Bureau of Justice. And the George is one of the oldest pubs in London. This is Temple Street, which Temple Church is on, and this is a Knights Templar church. This was one of the original Knights Templar churches from way, way, way back in the day. This was the inside of one of the churches, and I loved the ceiling, and this was the biggest altarpiece I have ever seen. Had to get my picture in front of the phone booth, of course. Then after all of that, we went to Camden Town to do a little shopping and a little lunch. The smells here are incredible. I wish that they had smell-o-vision. They also, for some reason, have a ton of gigantic food. There was this hot dog, there was a pizza, there was a croissant, and had to laugh at this one. This is in one of the hallways of the Camden markets. There's so many things to see in this market. This place was my favorite. It's a sweet shop, and we got ice cream here, and it smelled absolutely incredible. Camden is where Amy Winehouse is from, so they have a little statue of her, and it was a super busy day. It was actually a weekday, and it was still crowded, as it always is. But when we got back to our side of town, we went into the King's Cross Hotel, like inside of the station, and I had no idea they have this super cool bar in here. So had to take pictures, and then of course, as we were at the King's Cross station, had to go to platform 9 3/4, as you do. We went into the souvenir shop, bought some souvenirs, and then ended the day with tons of snacks.